Live, live, live. Good morning, church. Can you believe it? It's already June. Oh man, I can't believe that. It's already the sixth month, and that means Bo O is turning a whopping 48 in July. So, how about that? Time just keeps on slipping into the future, I guess, as the song says. Something like that. I could have it wrong, but anyway, we're going to be in Revelation 4. And remember, in the book of Revelation, we talked about, it talked about in chapter 1, the things that would be revealed to John the Apostle, the things which are, which the things that are in the present, um, and it says the things that have been, and then the things in the future. And so the whole book of Revelation is kind of like that. It's things that are, things that have been, and things that are in the future. And so let me see if I can read that to you, just so you remember um, what it said. Right therefore, what you have seen, what is now, and what will take place later. So that's the specific of kind of the overall um, way the book of Revelation kind of goes, how we interpret the book. It's right, the things which have been seen, okay, what John sees, and then what is now, and then what will take place later. Well, we went over some of the churches and kind of did a little devo on those, and it's kind of neat to know that Jesus knows us. We see that on all the letters to the churches in the book of Revelation. Jesus corrects them or admonishes them, encourages them, gives them great promises, great warnings as well. And these are just things that are the church, right? Us. And these are letters to us and things that we need to work on. And some things we do great, and there's always that encouragement to persevere and to hold fast and to stay with your first love and to don't let your love grow cold, right? But keep pressing on. Don't give in to the other things that are going on around you, right? And in chapter 4, it's great because chapter 4 is kind of like a focus chapter. It kind of goes, okay, we talked about the churches and the issues with the churches, and that's the issues with us. When I say churches, just think of you. And then from here on out, we really aren't going to see the church at all. We're going to see a lot of focus in on Israel. We're going to see a lot of focus in um, on God's dealing with the world and dealing justly with the world. And I think this morning too that in a world, what happens when we see an injustice in the world? People get upset because in us there's this awesome thing that goes like, man, something was done wrong. We need to rectify it. We need to make it right. And being patient to allow sometimes even the government, the officials, do their thing in executing justice. We can't wait for that, so we just go ahead and go for it, and and we see that a part of us sees a part of us in this world goes, yeah, it's some people will say, hey, it's justifiable to be angry and to do things and that kind of thing. But I want you to see that in the Bible, God will deal justly with the world. And so when God goes and deals justly with the world, God's indignation, his wrath, is against injustice. So just as you as a human being have wrath against injustice, check this out: God has wrath against injustice. And when you start thinking about God's wrath and our injustice to a God who has created us and our accountability to that God, then we start going, whoa, oh man, that makes me want to take a step back, right, from my wrathful attitude. And so chapter 4 becomes a real focus for us because we as human beings, we tend to think of all these other things. And now in chapter 4 it says, after this, after the time of the church, it says, I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. So now things get really focused, right? In heaven. And the voice I heard first speaking to me like a trumpet, just think loud, said, Come up here, I will show you what must take place after this. So John immediately, right? Boom, is there. He comes up, right? And I will show you what must take place after this. After what? After the churches. And it says, At once I was in the Spirit. So we get the idea that the church now is gone, and now John is caught up, right, to this place of seeing heaven. His focus is now there. Now, does that tell you anything about us? It tells me something this morning, and that is the Colossians 3. We just got done our Devo in Colossians 3. And what did that say in Colossians chapter 3? It says, Have your heart and mind focused in heaven where Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father, right? So we need to be focused. Now, if you don't focus correctly, if I don't focus this morning correctly on the things that are of God, then I will get unfocused on everything else. I don't know if that makes sense. I think it does to you guys, how that works. Um, we can, we can either fear God and that will deal with our fear of mankind, or we will fear mankind because we have a lack of fear of God. And when we fear mankind and the things around us, it's just sure enough that we're just not focused. Like this is saying, you know, focus on the things of heaven, right? Focus there, on the things of God. And so what do I need to shut off in order to do that, right? And sometimes, we would do much better as people if we would just shut off, just turn off. You don't need to watch that. You don't need to watch, I got to tell you, what's worse, news or some bad movie with something bad in it? Well, someone would say, well, neither, but I would just say maybe it's the news. Maybe that's the bigger problem, right? Is it gets us so focused on the earth that we can't see heaven. We can't see the things that we need to see clearly, and that is God. We got to see God. Now, this chapter again in verse 2, it says, At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven. When you're thinking of the things of God, you're in the Spirit. You're thinking of God. You're thinking of the nature of God, the character of God. And man, that's getting you into a spiritual framework in life. You're more concerned about now the spiritual things. And it says, and the one who sat there had the appearance of a jasper, a carnelian, a rainbow resembling an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. Before the throne 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. Also before the throne was what looked like a sea of glass, crystal and clear. And I don't know about you, but when the thunder hits in the monsoon times, I get a little nervous. I'm one of those guys who, when I see the thunder, I kind of go, whoa, that's kind of sketchy. That's a little scary, and I don't know if I dig that much. It just seems overwhelmingly scary to me. That kind of thunder. And here you see that. And again, I was reading this quote, and it says, we fear men so much because we fear God so little. And I was like, man, that's so true. Sometimes when if we focus more on heaven, and in this chapter, that narrow focus on God, right, in our life and in our daily life, then we're not going to be so concerned about everything around. We're not going to have such a fear of mankind. Now I love this because around the throne, he sees around the throne, and he sees one sitting on the throne who sat there, and his appearance was like a jewelry store. I have no clue what it was like, but all I know is this morning, man, it must have been bright. And so all these, just carnelian, jasper, rainbow, you get the idea, emeralds. And then it says around, surrounding the throne, was 24 other thrones. Seated on them were 24 elders. The word elder is in the Greek presbyter, and it's where we get the word Presbyterian. And if you've ever studied the book of Timothy, this would have come up before. The elders, the presbyter, the leaders, right? The overseers, the pastors, the shepherds, these kind of ideas. Who are these people? Well, I believe they are a symbolic or a symbol of those that are redeemed, meaning those people that have the church age people, people that have been bought by the blood of Christ and redeemed. They have been redeemed out of the world, been made united with God through Christ, and they live to serve God. And the reason why is because this is what the Bible calls us. It calls us elders, presbyter. It calls us priest of God. All of us are there to serve God. We are priest of God. It's cool. Do you focus your life on that this morning? Do you focus that you are a priest of God? That's pretty powerful, right? Um, and I see there's representation here of that. There's a lot of different thoughts, the 24. There's 12 disciples, there's 12 tribes of Israel. Is it a representation of those things? And it kind of goes on and on, but you see that these people are before God, and I love that. The focus again is just on riveted on God's circle, right? So everything's focused on the center. So what does that tell me this morning? That I need to be in my life, I need to be circling God. So whatever I'm doing, God's got to be the center, right? There used to be that worship song, "Oh Christ, be the center of our life," right? Be the one we fix our eyes. And that's that idea. We encircle God, right? And so it's kind of cool. And we see wisdom is before God, the seven spirits, this idea of complete wisdom being before the Lord. And it says in the center around the throne were four living creatures, and they were covered with eyes. The idea of eyes sometimes is wisdom, right? In front and in the back, their first living creature was like a lion. Second was like an ox. It says the third was the face of a man, and the fourth was like a flying eagle. Now, this is kind of cool, and I kind of like this because I love going to the zoo. And I don't know about you guys, but I just find it super fascinating that there's all these cool creatures that God's created. Now, for you who are Bible students, you want to study Daniel chapter 2. You want to study Daniel chapter 7 and kind of go over what these things are all about. Get into the book of Ezekiel. Find out about the creatures there and the wings and the eyes around them and just the faces and, it's just, wow, what a study, right? There's so much there that you can unpack in a Bible study. But this morning, we just want to know that God is a God who is the center of all of his creation. Notice what happens. It says in verse 8, each of the four living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under his wings. Day and night they never stopped saying. They're focused. Man, that's a lot of eyes to be focused on God. And they never stop saying, holy, holy, holy. 3 holies, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit. 3 holies is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come, right? They never stop. They're focused. They're just riveted. And I find that so fascinating. What is God like? I mean, the majesty of God, the amazingness of God. Even the amazing wrath of God and the justice of God. You think there's injustice on this planet, Just think what if there is a God who is holy, just think of the injustice against a holy God. And think of how awesome that justice must be, right? All other justice on this planet must be is probably annihilated in the presence of God's justice, right? Absolutely. And so God's justice must be super, super holy and high. And so, gosh, when you contemplate that, when your eyes are riveted on those thoughts, throughout the day, man, we really start looking at stuff differently. We start going, man, gosh. And again, turn off the noise, man. Turn off the other things that are trying to be the center of your world. So it says, whenever the living creatures give glory, honor, and thanks to him who sits on the throne and he who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him and who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. They lay their crowns before the throne and they say, you are worthy, O Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. So isn't that cool? So whenever the four living creatures are focused on the throne and they give honor and thanks, and I think this morning, do I give honor and thanks to the one who sits on the throne? Is that something that's in my heart? Honor and thanksgiving. Notice what the 24 elders do. Those that have been redeemed, we're going to find that these people that have been redeemed by the blood of Christ. It says that they worship him who lives forever and ever. Sorry, my allergies. And they lay their crowns before the throne and say, you are worthy. So again, what we see in chapter 4 of Revelation is just like a focus. It's just like John gets to see the focus of the throne of God. He gets to see what it's like for the heavenly host to be around God, and that the focus of heaven is, guess who? It's God. Yeah, what makes heaven so cool is that it's God. God's there. Isn't that cool? And so hopefully, that's how we look at our lives today and tomorrow. There's always going to be news that we're going to get and we're going to hear and things of that nature. We're never going to know all the news perfectly. We're never going to know everything that's going on in a complete way. We don't have firsthand knowledge on everything. Everything we get is going to have some kind of slant or some kind of bias. And we all have to take things with a grain of salt, knowing there's some truth in it. There's probably some things that are maybe a little bit taken out of context or things of that nature. But what we do want to do is make sure that Christ is the center, of our world and of our life. And we can see that by how we worry or what we're concerned about. We can see sometimes where maybe Christ isn't the center. Remember, Christian, that we're already dead. We've already died. Our life already is with God in heaven. Yeah, it's no longer you that live, but it's Christ that's in you. You are dead, the Bible says. And so we live as dead people. And we live as people that have already died to the world. As Paul says in another place, that we've been crucified to the world and the world to me. Right? It's like our life is hidden with Christ in heaven. You don't have to, we're not part of the world anymore. And so you see that how people might not like us too much because we have that attitude, I guess. But you see how we're focused on Christ. And it's through that actually we have great clarity into other things. And this is what one person said. He said, he that fears God fears nothing else. So he that sees God sees everything else. And I like that last part. He who sees God sees everything else. When you fix your eyes, when you're circled around the throne, everything else becomes clear. And when you see something in its perfection, and by faith we can see Christ in his perfection, then everything else just doesn't compare. Everything is such a lack. everything falls so short. The justice, the righteousness that the world demands, the needs of love that the world demands and needs desperately, everything falls short of what is needed. And so, anyway, cool devotion, a lot of cool stuff to think of. You guys have a great day. And hey, it's June. So enjoy some heat, right? We'll talk to you later. Bye bye.